Hey guys, I'm trying to find this best position for the microphone. Hey, it was true. When you wait, great things happen. Let me see if I can do this. Can you all hear me? Can you all hear me? Is this any better? We're still in the kitchen cooking, but I think I don't mind. I mean, if my half of my face is behind this, I don't mind, but I appreciate already Aussie expat coming in and asking everyone to upvote. Aiden trusting me in advance, upvoting and asking others to upvote. I appreciate that. It gives me a lot of pleasure and a lot of confidence to walk into the live stream, and I already have 6 upvotes. That's more affirmation than most people get in their entire life. So life is good. Life is good. Ozzy, Aiden, and Jake Brooks, thank you for being here. Um, we're going to talk about some new releases tonight. And, it's been only 4 days, but they have been, of course, rolling. That is one of the great things about the new age of communication, in a way, the new age of um, really the digital age, the social media age of the watch world, has of course brought a lot of detrimental aspects with it. But the great part of it is that we are not really bound to a single release schedule for the entire year, right? The brands are very self-conscious and very self-aware of imposing their own agenda. So even though they now have a trade show in Watches and Wonders, which grew out of SIHH, and which kind of became a universal camp or simply a majority camp after Basel, after everyone else broke off from Basel World, after Basel World basically went bust. Um, of course, they still have that, and a lot of releases are made in the run up to Watches and Wonders and during Watches and Wonders. But the brands also have their own agendas. The anniversaries of their most established, shall we say, iconic models usually serve as an important platform. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Their own history and their own anniversaries as a brand also is quite important, and we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. And they can sometimes they have so many releases in a single year that they simply cannot fit it all, so some of it in a way bleeds into the next year, and we'll talk about that as well. So there are 3 different categories that I want to talk about in terms of new watch releases, and they speak to all 3 of these, and then we'll go from there. And you let me know if I'm missing out on anything, or if I didn't necessarily mention one of your favorite releases already for the year of 2023, or maybe from the last days of December in 2022, because there's a lot that's come out and that we haven't necessarily, pardon me, addressed. And I want to start with a brand that I really respect, and that I actually dedicated an hour-long conversation uh, earlier today. As you may or may not know, the vintage expert Eric Wind was my guest earlier today, early in the morning for me, but 10 o'clock Eastern time. And we had a great conversation about the legacy of vintage design generally, and more specifically about the creative process that Eric Wind and Jack Carlson went through while they were um, fashioning this idea and pitching it to Seiko, and how they are yet planning other releases through Seiko, and also most immediately, actually through Zodiac as well. So Rowing Blazers, if you didn't know, is a style brand. They can be very quickly summed up as being a neo-prep brand, kind of like Ralph Lauren meets streetwear. Um, but that doesn't quite do justice to the kind of mindset that Jack Carlson inhabits, the kind of work ethic that he has, and the kind of semiotician he really is in reading these societal signs and cultural trends, and really being able to connect the dots. So he has already made quite a bit of splash in the world of fashion, in the world of men's and women's style, by doing a lot of collaborations. And I was very happy to see that collaborating with his friend Eric Wind, he has brought the same kind of fresh set of ideas and adventurous spirit into watches as well. So check out that interview if you would like. It's an hour long, or exactly an hour. So if you listen until the end, you will hear a small surprise, which is, of course, also coming up and being announced on this channel and my Instagram. So I'm gonna drop that link as well. I'm sure you saw the link already in a way, but here's my Instagram, and it really does help. These things, as you know, on social media grow exponentially, grow virally. So even if you follow me on YouTube and not Instagram, and vice versa, try to do both if you can, because that helps me reach simply more people. Right? I'm glad to count you as one of my supporters in either case, but if I can have your support in both, that helps me expand quite quickly. So I was already having a conversation earlier about Seiko today with Eric Wind. Of course, we have also talked earlier on this channel about how Seiko is approaching 2023, and how already in late November they had at least made public two ideas they had about two very special watches that they're introducing for the Prospects series on the one hand, and the Presage series on the other. Of course, on this platform, we are huge fans of Seiko 5 and the 5 principles that presents for affordable mechanical wristwatches. We're also huge fans of the SKX series that preceded the Seiko 5 in its modern, more recent iteration. But certainly, I'm a fan of Seiko on many other levels as well. And I think, in many ways, for me at least, Presage for more classically designed, dressier pieces, and Prospects for sportier and vintage diver-inspired pieces are that kind of sweet spot, right? I always say, again, and it reflects how I look at watches. It's not a factual statement, but I keep saying that Grand Seiko to me means that I would never spend more than $1,000 on a Seiko, and I stick to that. But that's just me. So I do respect people who actually take that plunge and have a Grand Seiko in their collection, or have, in fact, entire collections of Grand Seiko. They're a great brand. They bring onto the table so many innovations, including the hybrid spring drive movement, but also the great design that we have been admiring from Seiko at all levels, just to a level of assembly and finishing that's up to the level of their luxury competitors in Switzerland and Germany. But today we're going to talk about the two watches they are releasing in 2023 to celebrate their 110 years in making wristwatches. And in the Presage line, they basically went with a recreation, but also rethinking of the Laurel, which was their first wristwatch. And in Prospex, they went with a classic Seiko diver, a kind of a reimagining, pardon me, of their white birch dial in this cushion shaped late 60s, 70s diver aesthetic, which I completely adore. So let's start with that, and we will go back to their recreation of the Laurel as well. So this is the Seiko Prospex Save the Ocean limited edition. I really like actually the largely monochromatic look, which is enhanced, of course, not only by the particular shades that they chose for the dial, but also by their minimization of the date window, lodged between 4 and 5 o'clock there. But similarly, with the colors, or with the color scheme they chose for the timing bezel, for the rotational timing bezel, which is really beautiful, because not only does it fit the larger monochromatic theme of the design, it also really sparks that vintage diver aesthetic, because that shade of gray looks like so many faded quote unquote ghost bezels that I keep seeing on vintage divers and vintage Seiko divers too, of course, but vintage Rolex divers mainly, for me at least. So that I think is a beautiful detail, and I love the fact that everything follows those same gray monochromatic lines, except for the seconds hand, which again is beautifully contrasted in blue. Hey, Basils and Barlight Broker. I don't really look young, but thank you for the compliment. I look young for my mental age and maturity, and way too old for what my passport says. Basil's, nice to see you, man. And JB, thank you for recognizing everyone. This is your home too. So I'm glad you take that very seriously, and you're playing a great host in the chat. I really appreciate the fact that you take your ranch work seriously. So this is a great diver. Again, real ISO certified level, MIJ, made in Japan. Of course, that south winding movement, and it's actually, I mean, they're cushion shaped divers, since they are so thin for most dive watches. They sit so well on the case. I will bring it out in a second. I have a turtle, the so-called king turtle, with that waffle dial and the larger green color aesthetic. And that watch, on paper, I could have thought that it would be uh, too large for my wrist, but that's absolutely not the case because of the shape of the case, because of the slim profile of the case. On the rubber strap, it sits so nicely and fits so snugly, as a diver should, as a tool watch should, that it just looks perfect. Really, no matter what your wrist size is, if your wrist is big, by all means, it will still be a watch that will make its statement, that will still make its presence felt. But if you have the ignominy, so to speak, to have frail, small wrists like me that are on top of that, very hairy, you'll still be quite well served by a Seiko diver because they are thoughtful, because they actually toil over this sort of design element, because they actually bother to think, which you really cannot take granted for a lot of watch brands and modern manufacturers, especially manufacturers that produce at this level, with this kind of volume. I mean, I do not even know how many watches Seiko sells globally without even counting the watch movements that they source for other brands. But I'm sure probably they're only rivaled um, by Apple or something, and the Apple watches. I mean, Seiko probably is one of the foremost manufacturers of watches globally, and it's really amazing the kind of consistency they have that is appropriate to the price point. And here they have that 6R35 movement, which is relatively thin, self-winding, and with 70 hours of power reserve, which should be absolutely industry standard for a sports watch, but that's not necessarily the case, right? So this is great. The textured dial captures the power of the polar glaciers that shape the landscapes and seascapes of the Arctic and the Antarctic. The silvery white color and delicately striated surface creates a unique depth, or create a unique depth that invites repeated looks, and yet a single glance is all you need to tell the time on this highly legible limited edition tool watch. Well, among all things, they write great copy as well, so I will have to tip off my hat to Seiko there as well. And you see, again, you see that bezel and how it is kind of radially brushed too. So there's so much texture on this watch that otherwise looks so simple, so pure, so clean, so monochromatic. It's really a marvel. Seiko is not necessarily known for its bracelets, so we can respectfully pass over in silence. But if it is nothing to write home about, it's also not a disaster. And they also provide a limited edition, kind of a chevron styled strap here again. Single color, but many different shades and textures. That's really amazing. And they have the whole Save the Ocean shtick, of course, reflected in that material as well, right? It's made from recycled plastic bottles. Features a traditional braiding technique from Japan called Seitru. This is another art that Seiko and their marketing department knows how to harvest so masterfully. They will find something that that can be done anywhere else in the world, but because they do it so much better, they always give it a very authentic Japanese name. You gotta appreciate that. I mean, they have taught an entire world of us non-Japanese people what Zaratsu polishing is. So sky is the limit at this point. Amazing, amazing. And again, you have that beautiful wave image without which I really feel at a loss. Again, I was talking to Eric about the Seiko 5 Rowing Blazers limited edition, which has a very pretty case back, which has an exhibition, but also etched on that glass theme of Memento Mori. But, you know, when I have a Seiko watch, I like seeing that wave motif, which mistakenly or not, a lot of people have attributed to that famous Hokusai print, the Great Wave of Kanagawa, right? Which is, of course, very iconic and very, very fantastic piece of art. So that's a limited edition of 5,000 pieces, and this piece, Seiko SPB 333, is expected to retail for around $1,500, right? Or no, it's actually more like 1,350. Yeah, like 1,300, 1,350. That's going to be the retail price for this limited edition watch that will have a run of 5,000 examples. So this is the Prospex part of the 110. That's the sporty celebration of Seiko's 110th anniversary. Let's go to the dressy celebration, which is this new Presage that is a pretty thoughtful and somewhat transformative, pretty loyal, but also rather unique recreation of Seiko's first wristwatch, which was called the Laurel. Right, the Laurel, Japan's first wristwatch, was created in 1913, and it laid the foundation of the wristwatch manufacturing industry in Japan. Seiko Presage will introduce a limited edition model for the 110th anniversary of Seiko wristwatches that pays homage to the Laurel and remains faithful to the original design. And there you go. This is the original design. This is a piece that was made by Kintaro Hattori in 1913. Seikosha began production of the Laurel. After the release of the Laurel, Seikosha made tremendous advances in its development of every wristwatch manufacturing technology, from design to microfabrication and machine tool manufacture. In 2014, right on the centenary, basically, or right after the centenary of this beautiful wristwatch, Japan Society of Mechanical Engineers designated the Laurel as one of its mechanical engineering heritage in recognition for its contribution to the development of mechanical technology. So the case, again, is a pretty faithful, perfectly round recreation of the Laurel case. The crown is what we would call onion crown, perhaps, especially seen these days on pilot watches, but certainly not exclusive to them. It does provide, I'm sure, a very satisfying grip, though as far as I understand, this watch does have a self-winding movement and not a manual one. So it takes away part of the pleasure that you could derive from that beautiful crown. But, I'm sure it's still going to be banging. And yes, I mean, the dial itself says Seiko Presage Automatic. So even though you have this sort of outsized crown and a power reserve indicator on the dial, which might lead you to think that this is a hand-wound piece, it is actually an automatic piece. Another tricky part of it, and we'll come to this down here as well, that at 6 o'clock, what you might at first mistake for petite seconde or small seconds dial is actually a pointer date indicator. So, and you have a seconds hand that is centrally deployed instead. The dial, once again, as was perhaps the case with the Prospex, with that glacier slash birch, silvery white birch dial. The dial, I think, is once again the centerpiece for this Seiko Presage recreation of the Laurel, because it is a beautiful white enamel that is numeraled with very distinctive Breguet numerals with 12 in flare of red. And the dial itself also has a kind of depth and dimensionality that is given to it by the central recess. And finally, of course, the hands themselves, which have this sort of spade-like style, especially for the hour hand, are heat blued, which sets them off. I mean, that's one of the beautiful contrasts when it comes to watches, if you ask me. I mean, one thing that I love as an enthusiast of and collector of vintage watches is the faded, really the expired luminous material on a matte black dial, right? Kind of faded tritium, patinated tritium against the black Rolex dial, for example. To me, that's a climax, right? And I mean it in the most sexually suggestive manner possible. But another genre of that sort of orgasm, that sort of horological orgasm, would be, I think, a beautifully oven baked enamel dial, and the way heat blued, classically styled hands jump off from it, as it does in this piece. So even for styling's case, even if everything else was completely off-putting, and it is not, that's not what I'm trying to imply here, this Seiko piece, I think, for anyone who likes the design of vintage pieces, early wristwatches, even pocket watches, I think this is a great piece. It would be a great fit to any collection that aspires to kind of bridge between wristwatches on the one hand and pocket watches on the other. This fits right into that gap. all the while providing you something that is very modern, very recent, um, and relatively affordable again, because the pricing is very similar when it comes to this Presage Seiko as well. This one is a caliber 6R27, which I think has 42 or 45 hours of power reserve. Still quite satisfactory. Nothing to write home about. But again, I think um, quite good for something that you can put into rotation. And yeah, you have that power reserve indicator, which at least signals you when you pick that watch back up, whether it needs some old school herky jerky, a little bit of shaking here and there, uh, or simply a little bit of a crank at the crown, which I'm guessing, I think 6R27 is one of those Seiko calibers that even if it is self-winding, it still allows for hand winding the movement as well. If I'm not mistaken, of course, feel free to correct me as always in the chat. This is a more limited edition, still quite numerous, if you ask me, 2,500 pieces. And again, it's priced in a way that really would make it accessible to a number of different kinds of enthusiasts. I think this piece is perhaps on the hither side of 1,500. If the Prospex was 1,300, 1,350, this piece is more like maybe 1,500, 1,600. It might run up to 1,800. The official prices have not been announced yet for the distinct markets of Seiko. Seiko, of course, being a very global brand, but that's what you should expect for these watches. Think of them both as being 1,500s plus minus 200. Let's put it like that. That's the price range we are talking about for these two Seiko watches. So let's see what people think. Let's have a little poll right there. Which Seiko 110th anniversary watch do you prefer? Presage SPB 359J or Prospex SPB 333J. Right. So let's see how those fare while we move to our next topic, to our next release. Hey, Aiden, nice to see you, man. Welcome back. I want you to scream Rolex or Daytona before the show ends. Please do. So this brings me to the next release that I want to talk about. I said, now that we have kind of a year-long rollout when it comes to the new product releases, and we don't have to stick to a single release. We don't have to wait for the trade show to satisfy our curiosity. One of the detriments of that is what happened when Audemars Piguet released more than a dozen different models, all of them captivating and interesting in their own way for the 50th anniversary, for the 50th birthday of their icon, their brand within brands, that is the Royal Oak, right? The famous Gérald Jantin design that was introduced in the Basel Fair in 1972. They had so many bangers, I should really say, for the 50th anniversary. They released so much that it surprised me a little when they came out with these two um, tourbillons at the very beginning of the year. But I also kind of feel like, you know, they must have really intended to squeeze these in, perhaps to the last gasps of 2022, but perhaps there just was not enough time. And, you know, unlike us Americans here, Europeans actually know how to enjoy life. They take breaks once every so often around holidays in the summer, you know, so I'm sure it was pretty hard to fit in these two lovely pieces into December, and they are actually here and not as 50th anniversary pieces. They have been phased out in a certain way. That does not mean that any of those pieces that Audemars Piguet released, including the new reference of the Jumbo Extra Thin, the historically faithful edition of the original Royal Oak, which is 16202. All of these references are kept, but they will go back to the standard rotor, which you will see in this, rather than the 50th anniversary stylized commemorative rotor. Now, a lot of times for their tourbillon designs, Royal Oak has been quite aesthetically, I have to say, innovative and eye-catching. You know, they had that sort of cobblestone like pattern that kind of explodes the traditional tapisserie pattern from out of the tourbillon cage. I think they have a pretty specific term for that particular pattern that escapes me at this point. Here, they basically iterated that sort of pattern in a much more unique and artisanal dimpled effect on the dial, which in this very rich inky blue at once differs from, but also pays tribute to that classic element of design in the Royal Oak, which is the tapisserie dial that has those, waffle-like bits, especially Grand Tapisserie dial that sort of explodes or emanates out of that tourbillon cage. This is the white gold version, which also has that frosted effect, that frosted work on the face, on the surface of the octagonal bezel too. So again, you have not only the usual contrast and interplay of the grain brushed surfaces and mirror polished bevels and chamfers, but you also have added to that additional two layers of textures, including that frosted / Florentine finish, and on the bezel and the dimpled finish, kind of finely scalloped finish on the dial. It's all quite beautiful. And apparently they not only have come out with this 26730 BC, they also have a 26730 OR, which basically is a version of this in pink gold and with a rich brown dial. Which we can see right here. Fully in pink gold. Again, that frosted dial and the that frosted surface of the octagonal bezel and the dimpled dial. Both of these watches are 41 millimeters of a case diameter, and they have self-winding slash automatic movements, and the tourbillons are flying, which basically means that they don't have a bridge that sets them in place, right? That's a slightly more difficult and artisanal, so to speak, execution of the tourbillon that is a little more difficult. The pricing on these, I have not particularly. Yeah, I've not heard what the pricing on these will be exactly, but I'm imagining that it will probably be 250,000 probably. That's more or less that's more or less the pricing of a Royal Oak flying tourbillon. So even in steel, I think they had a steel version of this that came out at the beginning of the year. Did they? Well, they certainly had a version of this that came out at the beginning of the year. I think there was a steel one announced between them, but in either case, I think that was already 160, 175,000. I think in precious metal with this kind of more artisanal work, I'm pretty sure that these will be 200,000 and up. It was like a three-piece. It was steel, titanium, and pink gold that were around like 150, 175, 200. So this will be probably a little more than that, more in the range of $250,000 watch. I mean, if you can get it, right? You might have $250,000. Not sure how welcoming the AP boutiques will be in general, but hey, they might be willing to take your money. So there's no harm in trying. And as you can see here, they have already basically changed out the configuration they have with these rotors that are skeletonized and have that AP initials in a stylized manner. All right. Hi, Junior. So nice to see you, man. It's lovely to see all the familiar faces as well as the new faces in the chat. Don't fret. I love you all, and it's great to see you all, and great to see new faces. Very exciting to see some new faces in the morning. So I hope you are coming back. I hope perhaps you are even in the background already and listening. So it's fantastic. It's fantastic. I'm gonna put the link again if any of you guys want to join the conversation. I don't know if I forgot today to put my links there, put my stuff here. So pin that. And yes, thank you again. Thank you for your presence and support. And please hit the like button. It really makes all the difference. It does. It does give me just a little bit more exposure, which is sometimes all I need. Um, you remember I jokingly had said, what if that Valentine's Day 50 Fathoms were the only thing that Blancpain was going to introduce for the 70th anniversary of the legendary diver. Now, interestingly, they have found ways to, of course, botch what should otherwise be a pretty straightforward operation. But as you guys know, Swatch Group has 17 watch brands in its corporate body. And you can see on the English webpage of Blancpain what greets you on the 70th anniversary of the 50 Fathoms is, sorry, this video does not exist. So this is what happens when you don't know how to manage a heritage brand that you should really let go, right? Find people like Biver, like Piguet, who would happily take it off your hands and once again reinvent the brand, what happens to be the oldest established Swiss watch manufacturer. The honor of the oldest Swiss watch manufacturer that has been in continuous operation belongs to Vacheron Constantin, which was established in 1755. Blancpain, unfortunately, had a few moments, a few hiccups in its institutional existence that deprived it's of that claim, but it's still having been instituted, having been established in 1735. It is the oldest, and you know Jean-Claude Biver had come up with the idea of that beautiful motto, right? We have never made a quartz watch, and we never will. So that's what Blancpain represents. So let's be careful with what you do with a brand like that. It's, well, what a shame. What a shame. So Blancpain basically is celebrating the 70th anniversary of the 50 Fathoms this year. And it is also the 50th anniversary of Swatch Group's revival of the 50 Fathoms. That was in year 2003. And I think they went in a path, at least in the first move, in the opening gambit of 2023. They went in a direction that will satisfy a lot of the hardcores, a lot of the big fans of what is, in fact, the first modern dive watch, having been designed and realized by Jean-Jacques Fichter, the Alexandrine, the diver himself, a wonderful man of culture who came up with also the romantic name and alliteration of 50 Fathoms as well. It just rolls off the tongue. I mean, what a beautiful name for a watch model, right? And it does matter. You guys know, Submariner, 50 Fathoms, Royal Oak. It's not a coincidence that a lot of these lasting watch designs and models also have very punchy and at times quite creative, if not altogether poetic names. Um, as you know, the most modern, the most recent standard iteration of the 50 fathoms is a 45 millimeter watch, which um, is quite big. Yeah, let's put it this way. I mean, I love the heft that it brings. I love the fact uh, that they balance it out sometimes, not sometimes, but by often using titanium as the case material. I love that sapphire bezel, which has been a very distinct part of the model's iconography in the last 2 decades. Um, I love those outsized Arabic numerals, but I think 45 millimeters is just too big for a time only or time and date watch. So what they did is, I think, quite a nice compromise, because they went down to 42.3 millimeters, which I think is basically as small as they could go, while keeping their very well respected at this point caliber 1315. Right, speaking of power reserve, that is a caliber that gives you 120 hours. I mean, that's just a beautiful number there, 5 whole days. um and it is, by the way, as far as self-winding calibers with a full rotor go, it is quite beautiful to look at, if I may say so. This is a vintage Blancpain 50 fathoms that Hodinkee chose to present, um, with a bronze case to boot. I mean, what a grail for so many people. And you see the wonderful balance of it without that date, right? Again, I'm not gonna complain. I mean, you must have grown tired of this. Um, it has this commemoratory platinum rotor as well, on the 70th anniversary edition. They had gone the way before of using the Frédéric Piguet based 1153 for their 40 millimeter limited editions, which again, which is still a good caliber, which has 100-hour power reserve. It's nothing to sneeze at, but I think the 50 fathoms, um, having gained that sort of ground, having made that sort of step, um, should keep this caliber. So I think it's a good compromise to be at 42 millimeters, to preserve what made a lot of the modern contemporary current version great, while satisfying some of the fans who have been asking, who have been clamoring for a smaller, a more wearable 50 fathoms. Thank you so much, Junior. $5. Looking forward to 2023. Much love to Michigan, man. I love that place. I know it's not necessarily the best time to go, but I would love to be there right now. Man, it's a great place. Chris asks, "Hi YB, do you think Swatch Group mishandles its management of the Breguet brand as well as Blancpain?" Don't get me started. That's my short answer to that. But I think they should. Ah, man, I think they should let one of these go, huh? I know people have said to me before, well, you know, that Richemont has not only Alain Gonzone, but also Vacheron Constantin and Gégé Lecoutre. Well, yeah, sure. I'm sorry. Richemont does a very top-heavy roster when it comes to watches, but that's also their niche, right? They also have Baume & Mercier, which I respect as a brand, but it is certainly not in the league of the Langes and Vacherons or Jaeger-LeCoultres of this world. But they have done quite well. When I see Blancpain and Breguet languishing, and in a way having their catalogs truncated, right? I mean, whatever happened to the Type 20 since 2018, since 2020 especially? Type 20 completely went away in both the Aéronaval and the Transatlantique versions. It's gone. It's not even in the Breguet catalog right now. Well, why? I mean, the short answer is it just doesn't fit the Swatch Group vision for Breguet, which I guess sees them as beautiful, high horological, dressy watches. There's nothing wrong with that, but there's a particular reason, right? They seem to be thinking, hey, Blancpain should make less complicated watches, move away from that neo-vintage period where they had the leadership of Jean-Claude Biver and Piguet. And they can have the strong 50 Fathoms series and the Bathyscaphe, of course, and they can have the Air Command and the flyback chronographs and the complete calendars that are slotted onto these largely sporty designs, but everything else will be kind of cropped, right? There's still Viret, but it's not as prominent, and it's certainly not Swatch Group's priority when it comes to Blancpain. And in the same way, when it comes to Breguet, I think, they keep reviving the Marine, but it's just not happening. Type 20 is completely gone. Type 21 and Type 22, Type 22 is technically very interesting to the enthusiast, but Type 21, I think, has just become a comic book like design. I mean, the numbers have become so oversized and so colorful in such weird Fotina like ways that I don't even know what to think of it. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. I think, again, I know a lot about watches. I can advise individuals to make certain kinds of purchases to avoid bad deals, shady deals. I can, again, advise collectors on building collections from scratch, on where to go next with their collection, on how they can reconfigure and shift around elements of their collection. But hey, I have to be humble at some level. I can't advise these sorts of huge corporations what to do with these heritage brands they own. But as a fan of Breguet and as an owner of Breguet, who benefits from the way that the brand has been languishing, because I buy watches on the secondary markets, I still want to say I'm not happy with the way that brand is being handled. As a fan of Blancpain, I think, again, I don't own any of their watches, but I'm kind of sad. I would rather see them prioritized by their owners. And I know there's a Hayek who is the president of the brand, but I'm not sure designing the Chronochime caliber is what should be envisioned for Blancpain. It should at least have a web page that doesn't say, sorry, the video you were looking at or looking for doesn't exist. I really have to. Oh, great. It says it in German now. This is an improvement. Es tut uns leid. Dieses Video gibt es gar nicht. Bestimmt. This is, I mean, wonderful. So now you go to the English page and you get a German error message. I couldn't have, guys, I mean, I couldn't have made a mockery of it if I actually arranged it like this. I mean, it's so sad. It's so sad. They could do so much better. They should do so much better. But hey, this 3 x 70 piece run for the 70th anniversary, this is a good start. I cannot complain about this. They're clearly listening at some level, right? We would have loved to see a 40 millimeter edition that perhaps even revised the caliber, so you have all the technical abilities of 1315 at an even more compact size. I hope, because I heard that they are going to have more series. They are going to release more versions of the 50 fathoms for the 70th anniversary. I hope they produce something without the date, something that harkens back to the purity of design and balance that is reflected in this bronze diver right here from the 50s. And I also hope that, they perhaps release something that's a little more affordable as well, because this particular piece is going to sell for 18,000. That's what I heard when it comes to this 70th anniversary first series 42.3 millimeter that runs on caliber 1315. I mean, it's a black nylon strap. Have some mercy on the customer. Uh, release something that is also more affordable, that perhaps more of your fans can see within reach. JJ says you're welcome at my home anytime. That's very generous. I'm not even sure if I can accept that, but you're my big brother, man. I really appreciate that sort of invitation. The fact that you say something like that is to me worth the entire world. That's amazing. Chris says if JCB was running Breguet, and I like the fact, by the way, I have two big NFL fans in the chat, Jake Brooks representing the Buffalo Bills, and Chris is Kansas City. The Hora Mundi Marine would have been a big deal. I mean, that's a beautiful watch. Let's bring it up. But yeah, there's no reason the Marine can't be on the same standing and desirability as a sports range as the overseas range. Yeah, I think so. Why not? Why not? But it really isn't, right? It would be wishful thinking on my part to say that the Marine is just as good as the overseas. Racing R says, hello, my friend. Hey, man. So nice to see you. Your stream is one of the best for sure. It is the best, Racing R. Thank you very much. But thank you for the compliment. What is Blancpain chronograph line? Did they have a tradition in motorsport? No, they have their chronograph line is called the Air Command. So let's start with that before we shift gears to Breguet Marine. The Air Command is actually a beautiful piece. Don't take me wrong. It follows the lines of the classic aviation themed, aviation inspired chronograph. It's not in a way, in the way you implied, or in the way you perhaps wished racing. It's not a piece that has any connection to automotive or racing history, but it's one that follows the lines of Breguet Type 20, that follows the lines of, say, even the Breitling Avi or Copilot, right? The reference 765, for example. It's more in that vein, as you can see. They have it in a number of different iterations and sizes. So let's see them all in one page if we can. They have a limited edition that has this sort of black and cream kind of design, right? Kind of Fortina look. And that's the one which has, I mean, the web page itself, it's a disaster, really. I mean, this piece, the limited edition, has like a very unique and I think tacky propeller. So the standard one has this sort of rotor weight, right? Skeletonized or open worked. And then this one has a propeller on its back, but for whatever reason, I have to go one page back, and I can't have that on the actual page, on the same page as the model description. But this is it. This is the limited edition, and that's the propeller piece. It's a 42.5 millimeter case, and it's a watch that retails around $20,000. The case thickness is relatively satisfying, relatively good, right under 14, 13.75. Water resistance leaves something to be desired because it's only 3 bars, only 30 meters. So it's I mean, it's a watch that's very interesting, very intriguing, but still leaves something to be desired. The standard model is actually in titanium, if I'm not mistaken. Let me double check. Yes. Same dimensions, 42.5, 1375 millimeter in case thickness. I actually quite prefer this sort of sunburst blue. It makes it a little more unique, a little bit different than the other aviation chronograph Type 20 inspired watches that you have out here. The case itself, I think, is a little more, masculine, a little, has sharper angles and these beautiful chamfers on the lugs that distinguish it from the Breguet Type 20 when you can find it on the secondary market at this point, of course. And you can between $4,000-$5,000 depending on the condition. That can be a great deal. I would love to help anyone who would want to acquire a watch like that. You can always email me at lordhellespont5@gmail.com. That's lordhellespont@gmail.com. You can see the information in the crawling ticker. Again, this is a watch that retails at $19,100, and they also have reduced sized versions of that blue one, both in pink gold and titanium, or maybe the small one is actually stainless steel. Let's see. No, that's also titanium, and that's a 36.2 millimeter. That's still $18,000. But yes, this is the Blancpain Air Command, the flyback aviation-inspired chronograph that comes in a limited edition stainless steel version in 42.5 millimeters. It comes in 42.5 and 36.5 millimeter versions in titanium and pink gold. And in pink gold, the large case version is $30,700. So that's the kind of beast we are dealing with. JB 1999 Breitling Premier B09 Chronograph 40 Pistachio versus BP Air Command. Unfair comparison, I would say, JB, because it's like 4 times as much money, the Air Command. I think the Air Command is a very handsome watch. I would not want to pay list price for this. If you are getting it from Blancpain dealer, you should ask for a discount. You should find ways of getting it in the secondary market at a hefty price cut, at a hefty discount for an unworn piece even. But still, you're talking about a watch that maybe you would be able to acquire in as new condition around 15,000, in the 42 millimeter size version, maybe. I haven't checked it very quickly. We can check on Chrono 24, which is our favorite overpriced secondary market gauge. But still, let's take a look. What's the cheapest? What's roughly the average price for them? So Blancpain Air Command for the new models, you see they're even trying to sell them at premium. So it's not a piece that is easily found, honestly, on the secondary market. Whereas the Breitling B09 in the Pistachio, I think you even have it in Joma Shop, and it's like cheap as chips. Like, I've seen this model recently for around $5,000. So you're talking about the difference between 5,000 and 15,000. That being said, I have seen and worn the Pistachio B09 very recently, just a few months ago at Breitling Boutique. And frankly, I mean, the colors in this video, I warn you in advance, are not quite great. Yeah, the watches were shrink wrapped, and the lighting in the place was just really too bad. But still, I mean, this is the Pistachio and Cranberry. And both of them, I think, leave something to be desired. I think they're cool watches, but Air Command would be at a different level, but it also reflects that price point. It also reflects that price point. So that would be my take on that, and I think that could satisfy both Chris and JB, both Racing R and JB. And I also want to take a look at the Breguet Marine and maybe lead from there to some of the Marine models that I really like on the secondary market. So this is the model that Chris had in mind when he was talking about the Hora Mundi Marine, which is kind of the world time piece. It has this really fantastic world map, which is accented in blue over their distinctive hand guilloche wave dial. A beautiful moon phase there with a relatively realistically iterated or executed image of the moon at the date right under 12 o'clock. And here you have the uh, city for the time zone, which you manipulate from here. Um, I think it's. I mean, I like these new cases. Honestly, I think these watches look amazing and feel amazing on that rubber band. I don't know how long lasting it is. I don't know how well built those rubber bands are. Not owning one of those watches, but there's something oddly satisfying about wearing a hefty precious metal piece on a rubber band, and these pieces convey that very beautifully. The price point, of course, uh, is quite steep. It's 72,000, 72,700, in fact. So we are talking about quite a lot of watch for quite a lot of money. Right? We have basically the white gold on the rubber, white gold on leather, white gold on matching white gold bracelet, um, pink gold, pink gold on leather, and pink gold on a matching pink gold bracelet. And gold on gold, of course, brings you almost to six figures. So that's their World Time Marine watch, which I think is, there's a lot going on that dial, but I think it's also a very satisfying piece aesthetically. I just like that uh, globe cage kind of design that's plotted over a map, with the map itself beautifully floating almost on the sea, that is represented by that hand guilloche wave dial. I mean, I know some people really don't like the new marine, especially because of those heavily loom injected Roman numerals, but that dial really makes the watch. I mean, that's a rather arbitrary layout of those waves on the hand guilloche blue dial has a delightful play of light in person. So I highly recommend, if you have Breguet Boutique or Tourbillon Boutique or any sort of Breguet dealer that has one of the marine watches in their inventory, go see it. It's well worth your time. I think this is the 5557, the Oramundi Marine World Timer. You also have, and that's actually my favorite model when it comes to the modern or the most contemporary Marine series. It's 5517. I would say BC. To me, that's the climax of this um, line. BB, I should say. Sorry, BC would be something else. BB is their code for white gold. I think this is the most satisfying version. And again, um, to some, the nautical theme might seem to be a little exaggerated, right? You have the rotor weight of the watch is half ship's wheel. The crown guards look like a propeller of a ship. The uh, the movement itself, if you look at it, it doesn't even have Côte de Genève, but it looks like the inside of a Carlo Riva uh, piece. I mean, it's too much, right? The nautical references are a little much at some point. The clasp itself is a ship's wheel too. Again, the presentation box looks like the inside of a luxury yacht. So it's a little overdone, a little too theatrical, but it is a beautiful watch. But it is something that belongs to Breguet's catalog. After all, you are representing the legacy of someone who was the chronometrist to the Royal French Navy. In either case, this is this is a watch that I actually really like in all its iterations. My favorite is the time and date in white gold, and with that guilloche wave dial. But other versions of it are quite satisfying as well. And the Oramundi, the world timer version of it, being at quite another level financially, around $75,000, without figuring in a bracelet, if you would like. That's still a great piece. For me, the deal on these is the previous generation, which has actually its own enthusiasts, its own fans. Here's the blue dial version in stainless steel. This also comes with a silvery white dial and a black dial, which has the most uniform look in a way, because the big date kind of fits with the color scheme. That's not the case with the blue. As you can see, it's not a blue background, but since it's a big date window, I don't think it matters that much. The lume for the hours and minutes here is much more sparing, as you can see. The hands still being the traditional Breguet hands inspired. They're also filled with lume. And there's like a vortex, like again, water themed, beautiful design. I love the lugs of this piece a little better. It might not be as seemingly integrated, even though it is, as the latest one. But I kind of like the design, both as the case and dial, a little better with this earlier version, admittedly. And I'm a sucker for a big date window, big date display. And look, I mean, look at this. Look at this. That's also hand guilloche, by the way. And you have the classic fluting case band for the Breguet wristwatch, which has become a design signature, a signature design element. Again, that propeller inspired crown guard look. And the interesting thing here is that the vortex design of the dial is actually reflected on the back, right, where you have a similar decoration on the full gold rotor as well. What a beautiful piece. What a beautiful piece. And you can actually get these already for around $10,000. perhaps soon enough even cheaper. And they're great on these rubber bands, I think, in and stainless steel. They have an upgraded stainless steel bracelet that looks uh, quite stunning, but they're pretty rare. The old version of the bracelet I don't really like aesthetically. The precious metal versions, which are slightly more expensive, yellow gold, pink gold, etc., they usually come on leather bands, and they're almost like a different genre to me because they look very distinct and elegant. Um, so almost like a different watch, but just as stunning. Just maybe a little more dressy, whereas this is a little more sporty. And of course, the fact that these are stainless steel and the reference number you are looking at here is 5817 ST specifically. Um, the fact that these are stainless steel makes it great for everyday wear. Nick Butter. Hey, love you, man. Thank you so much. $10. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Mariner, yes. Hey, I love Watch Nicholas, man. What a great friend in this space. I don't, um, yeah, I can't say enough good things, but it was great to be. I had the day off work today because I was, using some time to unpack, set up some furniture. And I was on his show earlier when I was putting together some furniture, and it was a great host to me. So, um, Mariner is his catchphrase. So I wanted to repeat that. Nick Butter, love the pink 5517 on rubber. I do like it too. I prefer the white gold, but pink on rubber is great too. I am doing great, Nick, even better now that I have seen you. Enjoy your dinner, Jake Brooks. Yeah, the microphone. I actually had the microphone from before. It's from. It was a wonderful gift from a supporter. I set it up in the kitchen for now, but it's going to be part of the studio over there in that corner. It is coming along, but I still need to make a few purchases. I would rather, when I introduce that studio, I want it to be a whole vibe. As HRH Collection says, everything has to be a moment, everything has to be a vibe, and I want it to be a whole vibe. So I'm not going to introduce it in a piecemeal way. We are going to be cooking in the kitchen, chopping it up in the kitchen before that corner is ready for me to present you something different. But for now, hey, I emptied one of my spice cabinets, bolted the the stand there, and extended the microphone. I think it's a decent system. Uh, yes, actually, JB, actually, that is part of my inspiration, which you shared with me. I don't even know who that guy is, but the studio inspiration is certainly that. I want it to be like a cozy little corner where I can sit and study for the show, and also just start the live stream there and broadcast from there, from exactly where I'm sitting, with just enough lighting, just the right kind of lighting, just the right kind of mood. I want it to be perfect. um oof. Racing R is an interesting question there. So I want to, you know this is something that other people have told me too when I was wearing it. Explorer 2 with the polar dial. I have my 16570. I love that watch, and I think it's actually a great summer watch. On on its bracelet or on the NATO. You can wear it anywhere. It wears beautifully. I know the stainless steel bezel is not in any way scratch resistant. The numbers that are painted in do wear off. I don't care. I want my watches to age. I mean, my face ages like an avocado. Why shouldn't this material thing that I wear on my wrist age as well? Right? I think that's the watch. I think a Rolex, any Rolex with an oyster case on its bracelet would be my broad answer. If you're asking me specifically in my collection, I think 16570 is that. I mean, 5513, my Submariner, is really the best watch that I have and the best watch I will ever own. But I wouldn't wear that to the beach, right? Because it's a vintage Rolex diver, right? It has the ability, if you check the gaskets, it can be worn. But unless I'm doing something special with it, I'm not going to take it to water just like that. Whereas my 16570 is actually from year 2000, which means that as long as everything is fine, as long as the gaskets are fine, as long as the oyster case is sealed, I can take it anywhere and wear it with abandon. Today I'm wearing the 16710, the Coke. You know, there's a little bit of a glare there, so right there. This is a good look for it. This can be it too. You know, I think the 5-digit Rolex is just a beautiful everyday wear. Great compromise. You know, if you like a lot of the aesthetic aspects of vintage Rolexes, 4-digit Rolexes, year 2000 is the sweet spot. If you go a few years forward, you get the benefits of some of the newer movements. You get the solid end link bracelets. If you go a few years back, you get the benefit of expired tritium on the dial, which has that, you know, on this one too, it has that slight eggshell patina on the dial, because this is from 1997. So yeah, this is but that's the beautiful thing. When you have the aluminum bezel, Nick, they age so differently from each other. Mine does look like the Pepsi, right? Because the black has faded in a way that makes it look like navy, and the red has kind of become a hot pink of sorts. You know, the difference of the Pepsi is that Pepsi is a lighter blue and a real blue and red, which ages again differently from one watch to the next one. Whereas Coke is black and red, which can again age quite distinctively from one to another. The Coke bezel was introduced in a reference that is affectionately called Sophia Loren, because it had a thick case, thick, if you want to spell it, THICC. I won't blame you. It was a delicious piece. That was the first GMT Master 2, the new movement. So in its first iteration, that caliber was a little thicker. So it had a thicker case. That's when they introduced the Coke bezel, the black and red, and that's when they introduced, that's what GMT Master 2 was about, the independently moving hour hand as well. So it now technically, with the manipulation of the bezel, 24-hour hand and the independently moving hour hand, you can actually show 3 different time zones or read off the dial 3 different time zones if you would like. That's when the Coke was introduced, but the Coke was also used for 16710, and the Pepsi continued living its life along along the Coke bezel and along also the all black bezel in 16700, 16750 as well. So that's the short history of how Pepsi and Coke, how the black and red and blue and red bezels coexisted with the all black bezel. Yeah, so Rolex Oyster, or at a different level, it's the Seiko. It's the Seiko. I'll bring them both, actually. I'll bring both of those watches that I wear really often. Just give me 1 second, and this will be a good place to take a break. Hit the like button, please. I will be right back, and I will leave you with that beautiful new 70th anniversary Blancpain 50 Fathoms release. Guys, this is amazing. This is amazing. I actually made the mistake / choice of actually mentioning that I collect watches on a recent iteration of my dating profile. And in one of these apps that is very woman friendly, you know, where they get the first move, I just got someone with a first move who is asking me a watch advice. It says, "Hey, I need you to tell me, Rolex Oyster Perpetual 31 green, is it worth it?" And I said, "Why don't we talk about this over drinks?" I think that's a fair exchange, right? It's like a super chat. You come out with me, and I'll give you watch advice. How comical is that? But it's great. It's great. People love watches now, right? I remember when me loving watches was nerdy, was considered vain. What else? A bunch of negative things. But yeah, nowadays apparently it's a cool thing. You know about watches. Let me ask you a few questions. And she clearly knows a few things. She, she at least has enough of a taste to choose a model that's not the most oversized. That's not the hype color, pure and simple. It's not the Tiffany blue or whatever. That's pretty cool. Cool. I like this. I like this start to the conversation as well. Hey, give me watch advice. Guys, no offense. If you when you do that in the chat, I don't necessarily mind it. But if you do it with a super chat, I like it even more. And Nick Butter always does it that way, and so does JB, and so does JJ as well. So I appreciate all of you, and I appreciate all of everyone else as well for being here, for your support and presence, for just simply staying with me, and of course responding to that message. I mean, I'm a man after all. I forgot what I was actually doing, so let me go grab those watches for you. Ozzy is here. Ozzy, take it away.
G'day. How
Take it
you
away.
doing? It's been a
Good.
while. I didn't catch
Yeah.
you over any of the break.
No, that's okay. I didn't really take a break apparently because I just responded to something on the phone, and I was supposed to get my Seiko and Polar. So I need you to take over for a second if you don't
Okay.
mind.
Yeah. So gentlemen, yeah, I've been pondering things that young Brando's very much into, and that is like what's really next level when it comes to steel sports watches, and I'm pretty tapped out when it comes to Rolex. So I have been looking at silly things like platinum Daytonas and meteorite dial Daytonas, and I've already got a Daytona, and now my wife's got one too. But yeah, the obvious answer is actually, if I don't like gold, there's still a way to step it up a little bit, and that's AP. AP. I don't know. It's certainly not a watch I've initially found super interesting. Racing asks, what's the ultimate beater beach watch? Oh, that's a tough one. Could be this one. I like the Explorer 2. But you kind of want something a little more fun than the Explorer 2. This is too serious. It's
Really?
a little
That
too
that was
serious.
that was my suggestion actually earlier.
Yeah.
That's what I said. I will. That's why I brought it out. Yeah, 16570. Of course, in my case, yours is the upgraded, the bigger brother. But I think this is great. I mean, honestly, any Rolex Oyster case. I think any Rolex Oyster Perpetual, in a way, waterproof, self-winding, checks most of the boxes.
It's never going to focus. It's never going to focus. Oh, there we go. There we
Yeah,
go. So
beautiful.
that's the 226570. I think there's such a big difference between these two watches that you can have them in the same collection side by side.
Mhm.
You get like everything about this newer one is sort of like the 16570, but on a lot of steroids. there's
Yeah,
there's no two ways about it. This is just an oversized version of the 16570, and a little tip of the hat with the orange GMT hand. I wonder why they put the GMT Master 2 hand on the Explorer 2. I
mm.
mean, that's basically what it is, right? It's the same hand as the GMT
Yeah.
Master.
Laziness,
Yeah,
laziness.
laziness.
Rolex is not the most, I mean, in the last few decades, Rolex is not the most imaginative brand. Let's admit it. Let's say it as it is. But
Well, I mean, with recent new watches, so just not variants, but new watches like the Explorer and the new Air King, they're sort of demonstrating that they're willing to have watches that are completely brand new. They're not parts bin. specials basically,
Hmm.
which is, it shocked me when I heard they were doing the Explorer 36. I was like, okay, that's just a OP36 with slightly different, bezel on it, and throw the Mercedes hands and the dial, and then you got your Explorer. But it really isn't. Like every aspect of it is simply not. There isn't a single part on the OP36 that you could interchange.
Yeah, and the other option I had, by the way, and we will return to both this question and your question about maybe AP.
Mm,
This is my other watch. This is my ultimate beater watch, by the way.
mm.
The King Turtle. I grabbed this for like 350 from eBay. And it's I think it's just a great watch. It sits so well on the wrist. The cushion shaped Seiko case. It's fantastic.
Now, thinking more realistically, last year I did spend a bit of time in the pool and jacuzzi, and the watch that took the dunk most often was a Black Bay 58.
Yeah, right. That sounds cool as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's got the waterproofness for it. It's a cool watch. It's not so valuable that I have to stress, obviously, but it's still a luxury watch. So it's
Hmm.
it's yeah. I mean, for some people, the Black Bay 58 will be like their first luxury watch and something they'll cherish, and then for other people, it might be a little bit more of a tool watch, a beater. Either way, you can have your fun.
What is going on in the background?
I
What's he
think
watching?
Junior is playing
Transformers?
DC supervillains.
Okay.
He's
They
get,
I
he's
mean, it
getting good
wasn't
at
exciting
PlayStation.
music. I was just scared that I would get the copyright strike or some sort. Uh, oh yes, Racing R actually said that exactly. How does Tudor Black Bay Pro fit in this list? Hey, Tudor Black Bay Pro is basically in the same genre as the Explorer 2 watches that we were. It's the same family group basically. So I think Racing R has been posting on his Instagram a lot of photos of the Tudor Black Bay Pro on the beach. So he has already made his bed. He must
Right.
just lie in it at this point.
Yeah, Black Bay Pro is just a cooler version of one of these.
That's true.
Honestly,
That's
I,
it.
I
It
mean,
is a
I,
pretty
I
cool.
don't, I don't know when it's going to happen, but there'll be an excuse at some point in my life to get the Black Bay Pro.
You like it. You like that watch. I can sense it from the very first release. You were into it.
Yeah, yeah. I'm such a big fan of the 1655. It's just, but that's not a watch I'll ever own. I don't think it's just too much trouble. It's
Mhm.
it's not exactly the easiest one to source, and you would have to baby it at this point. Even though it's not as old as say like an older sub or something like that, it's still not. It's too rare to mess around with, honestly.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Um, do you want to talk a little bit about the AP Royal Oak? Let's start with your misgivings first, because I know, look, I mean,
Yeah,
I have still a lot of respect for Archie, but the way he complains about how finicky Audemars Piguet and Patek Philippe is, I find a little too theatrical and a little too exaggerated. I don't think those watches are actually as frail as he depicts them. They're also not, they don't promise to be what Rolex sports watches do on paper, too. So it's good
right.
to know that difference, but it's also important not to exaggerate it. But tell me a little bit about what you imagine them to be, what you expect from a Royal Oak if you own one in stainless steel, and we go from
Yeah. So first of all, like I've never been a big fan of the Royal Oak. As in, it's not one that jumped out at me. I was like, oh, that's gorgeous or whatever. But I started falling in love with it a little bit after getting that Casio. just getting a feel for that bracelet style. It actually, it sort of it obvious you have to start looking at the Royal Oak if you're looking at the Casio.
Uh-huh.
It's just unavoidable. It seems like a completely wild jump, but that's literally, what it kind of is, you know, thumb in the air type design. But so I started appreciating a lot more, but it sort of faded. Like I don't really care too much about the Casio. I don't wear them that much, so it hasn't been
Yeah.
reminding me. But I realize, yeah, like if I want to move up from my exclusively steel sports Rolex collection,
Hmm.
it's either getting Rolex and precious metal, and I now realize after my family now owns one, it's not for me. Fine for my wife, it's gorgeous, but it's just not for me. And then the immediate conclusion is really either like a Nautilus or a Royal Oak. And between the two, it's Royal Oak. Like, I'm with you on that one. It's just,
Yeah.
there's no real question.
Yeah, I understand. Again, I think, look, I mean, for me, it's like I'm a soccer fan, right? I like a lot of teams that play the European competition, s- uh, and there are two big club cups, right? One is the Champions League. Everyone knows it. Everyone wants it, and that cup is designed like an exaggerated, stylized version of a Greek urn with big old ears. I really hate that design. But if my team won it, if Real won another one, wonderful. That's great. It's the biggest cup. Nautilus is like that to me, right? I actually don't like the design, but if someone were to give it to me, or offered it to me at list price or something for whatever reason, again, I'm not seeking it, so why would anyone offer me anything? Um, I would get it, and I would probably wear it. I don't like flipping or selling watches, so I would probably try to find a way of keeping it in my collection. But I'm a fan of the Royal Oak, just as I like the UEFA Cup design, the Europa League design a lot more. That trophy to me is just more tasteful, and Royal Oak is like that. Royal Oak is maybe the original, but it is less appreciated in today's market, and um, but still, that's what I like. I find
Hmm.
this is the model that you chose, 15500, right?
Yeah, well, I'm trying my best. Like, I looked up quite a few models, including some chronographs.
Mhm.
So the robustness is a really big issue for me, ultimately. I mean, that is why I really do like Rolex. But
Yeah.
this piece would be complementing my wife's gold Daytona. That's not something we'd wear more than, say, half a dozen times in the year. It's really not going to be a piece that gets much wrist time. Like, that's the reality. It's not an everyday watch.
Well, can I say something? I mean, on an everyday basis, this might not be your golf watch, but it can be a daddy daycare watch. It's robust enough for that. It can.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think I won't overplay that too much. I agree. Like, that's why I want steel. Like, actual gold, I couldn't possibly wear it more than, say, 6 days of the year.
Mhm.
The steel, it'll come out those 6 days of the year, but maybe it does a little bit more work than that too. So yeah, I do want the steel for that reason. I'll probably get to enjoy it more than if it was in gold.
Yeah.
I really worry about size, and so I'm probably looking more at the 38 millimeter or 37, depending which model you.
Junior is back to the show. Yeah, this is what my friend JB sent me in the back. Pepsi is not okay. Things go better with Coke. Uh, funny.
Yeah, so he's having trouble with circle, but I don't think circle is meant to be used there, Junior. Yeah. So I'm thinking more the smaller one, but to my surprise, they don't seem much cheaper on the secondary market, going between the 38 versus the 41, which is greatly disappointing to me. Okay.
For me, I actually have much more arguments from my perspective. Again, from the perspective of my aesthetic preference as well, but there's some points that are somewhat objective, so I will share these. First of all, look, most of your watches are around, at least in Rolex's estimation, 40 millimeters or 41. But there are also Rolex watches, Oyster cases on matching bracelets. They wear, especially in the new generation sub, etc., they wear closer to what they say on paper, right? So if it says 40, 41, they really wear like a 41. Whereas the Royal Oak design with the distinctive integrated bracelet, it wears larger than what it says on paper. So 41, if you haven't tried, 41 is going to wear really large. It's going to wear larger than your Submariner, I can tell you that, and probably more than your Hulk as well.
That's my impression. That's my understanding, is that there's kind of no real way that I should even attempt, like the lug to lug, and the way that the first link doesn't actually fully articulate. There's almost no chance it'll work for me.
Well, the thing is also, look, I chose a different dial color too, just so we have an option, and I chose gray and white because you can't. I mean, look, you have special powers, so I believe that you have a chance of getting something in either case, but it's almost impossible to get even the reduced size or 41 millimeter versions. It's almost impossible to get the classic blue or the ice blue, which is a new color for them,
Yeah, I
in
saw that.
any Royal Oak. So it's more realistic if it's your first AP piece. If you're going to the boutique, for example, it's more realistic to ask for either 15450, which is the 37 millimeter, the reduced size, which I like in terms of its proportions. It's less than 10 millimeters thick. It sits beautifully on the wrist, has a presence that certainly speaks louder than 37 millimeters. And I also like that there is less negative space on this watch compared to this watch, which is 15500, the 41, which has this empty space right here. And I know it's
Right.
just a line of writing, and it says automatic in a way that most people hate, but I like the counterbalance that provides to Audemars Piguet and the AP logo right there. And that's why I like the AP logo at 6 o'clock in the classic jumbo design in the 39 millimeter. So this is thinner, more sleek, a more balanced design. And honestly, seeing what watches you wear, what watches that I see most frequently on your wrist, what you seem to be enjoying, I feel like 37 is a better fit for your wrist. But then again, it's best to go out and try them, even on secondary dealers who might have better stock than the AP boutique, than the local AP dealer, in terms of trying these watches.
Yeah. I absolutely have to see one in the flesh. My neighbor had an old one, but it was like badly polished.
Okay.
One of the things I can't remember who said it. They said like the big difference like between Nautilus and Royal Oak, just in terms of quality, is like the Patek's movement is like it's really up there, but then when you come to the case and bracelet, the finishing of the AP is just much better, which makes me very wary of like the grey market, where they're very often, you know, refinishing these watches for sale and calling them new, And
Mhm.
if I'm paying a lot of money for AP's finishing, I don't want to pay a lot of money for the grey dealer's best finishing. You know what I mean? it's I'm
I mean,
concerned.
again, I think if you get a white or gray dial for the 15450 15450, I think you can. It's not unrealistic. If you can wait a few months, I think the boutique can get a 37 millimeter for you. And I will say one more thing, by the way. Um, Even the older movement, I had a lot of respect for AP, and I'm an AP fanboy at some level as well. So don't trust my word. But since they have improved the caliber on jumbo, I would not actually say, when it comes to a direct comparison, equal to equal between 5711, let's say, and 16202, or 5811 and 16202. Actually, the new 7121 Audemars Piguet caliber, it's better. It has more power reserve. It's better finished. I think it has a more interesting architecture. So I think the Royal Oak has Patek beats in every way. When it comes to this particular movement, I think it still has more power reserve than Patek.
Is this the 15550 or did you say
15450. This is the 37. It has 60 hours of power reserve. Patek's movement for the Nautilus, which is 324, pretty standard, workhorse self-winding movement by them. That has a 45-hour power reserve.
What's the difference between this and the 15550? So 15450 and 15550.
15550.
There's no categorization on AP's website, is there? like, it's just the all models view when you go to Royal Oak. I don't know if there's a way to filter anything.
15550 is this. It's a little bit of a different design on the dial, as you can see.
Right, it doesn't have the automatic second line.
Yeah, so it's technically an update for the 50th anniversary. But yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, the new dials exist there. The ice blue is a new thing for it.
Mm-hmm.
I still
Yeah,
prefer the 15450. I think the boutique still should be able to get you one.
I see. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm fully prepared to ultimately go grey. I really don't have any way of getting inside the door in an AP boutique, to be honest.
I mean, in which case, I would most certainly advise that you go with 15450, because they are gonna try to charge you a premium for the 50th anniversary rotor. It's just a silly game they have there, and the 15550 is, I think, a little thinner as well. Well, I mean, I don't know what else I would have to offer in terms of, yeah, it's not much different. I mean, I think
Yeah.
the caliber it has a different number, but the specs of the caliber is the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I
Wait,
like the
go back
dial
to that
design.
parts thing. I've got the other one up on the
Which one?
caliber. On the caliber listing, it showed how many parts there are. 186 versus 282 for the other one. So
Yeah. So something more streamlined that still has the power reserve. I guess that helped them shave off half a centimeter there
mhm.
for the thickness.
But you're right. Like between these two, I do like them both. So yeah, it's quite nice. I definitely like these over say the 15500. Although I know we're talking different size there. I'm not a big fan of that chapter ring that's on the 15500.
This the reho or or the chapter ring, which
Chapter ring. So on the 15500, it sort of has a separate chapter ring, and it's not printed on the dial. And once you see it, I sort of like. I definitely prefer the models, like even the 15400 over a 15500 if that size was okay. So the current stuff, the five.
yeah, the
Yeah, see,
the
so
chapter ring is printed yeah, yeah, I see that.
that just looks odd to me. Like I wouldn't kick it out of bed. It's just, it just wouldn't be my first preference. I'd prefer the 15400 if it was the choice between those two. Although I think the 15500 had a movement that sort of filled the exhibition back a little better than the 15400. I think, if I spotted correctly. But I did hypothesize, like I asked my work watch group,
Mm,
and in my workplace there's people who collect watches, and there's going to be people who spend a lot of money on watches. But I asked, has anyone actually bought a watch from an AP boutique? And all of the watch group was like, it's like, nope, it's
nah,
never happened. One person said he actually was able to get inside the AP boutique in New York after he name dropped an executive that worked at AP New York,
right.
who's his friend. But that's as good as it got him so far. Is just in the door. I asked my wife, is like, okay, if we were able to get in the door, what would we do? What would we wear?
It's I mean, they have gotten too big in their britches, I think AP is, in a way, it's, yeah, they're pushing it a little bit, I think, with their self-image at this point.
I did, in some ways, I've heard stories that I respect, and I've also heard stories that I would make me very disappointed in a brand. So uh, on the respect side, there's someone in the community who got the music edition watch because he's actually in the industry, and they offered that to him as his first piece. Like they actually sought out someone and they reached out. I was like, that's really cool that they actually went out to try find someone actually in the industry to offer that special watch. And I thought that was really cool. But there was a Rolex forum post where someone was saying, like, they're basically done with AP because they'd spent many years spending a lot of money, but in the last 3 years, they haven't, like, just nothing. They won't,
Hmm.
he's just a nothing to them at this point. And I thought that kind of sucks a fair bit. Like, as much as people dislike Rolex servicing VIPs, I actually think that matters. Like,
Yeah,
I
look,
respect a brand taking care of people who've been loyal
wait,
to
I
it,
mean,
even if it wasn't so popular.
Aussie, I don't, I mean, you have flown over the world quite a bit. You lived in a few different countries. Maybe you don't necessarily travel that way in the last few years, but you have the experience. There are loyalty programs, right?
What, for flying, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
when you put in the miles, they upgrade you, they give you priority. They give you access to their lounge. Do When you don't get those upgrades, like I'm cheap. Everyone knows this, no doubt. I always fly with economic, sometimes even basic economy. I don't resent people who get those perks the same way I don't resent
100%.
necessarily people who get perks from brands because they are loyal customers, because they spend a lot of money with them, or they have this buying history. In the same way, I buy secondary market watches, and I try to get good deals because I look for the deal. I sniff the deal, I go after it, and I haggle. It is what it
Right.
is. I mean, this is how I operate. So I don't resent people for doing this. I just want to respond to JB's very generous super chat here, 9.99. How polarizing is the AP code 1159 Grande Sonnerie Carillon Super Sonnerie? This is a $750,000 watch.
Holy moly!
It's one of the Grande Sonnerie is one of the, like, chiming watches are already quite expensive. Grande Sonnerie is like one of the highest kind of complications that you can see, you can experience, you can hear, I should say, perhaps. So I'm not gonna say whether it's worth it or not. But you know, I think it's less about less about that case design, and I think the dial design is actually quite nice on this one. The pricing is so so, I mean, so outrageous. I mean, okay, let's put it this way. So a minute repeater is a chiming watch which you operate, which you have to engage. So it chimes usually the hours, the quarters, and the minutes, right? You have to activate it by the push of a button or by sliding upwards the slide, which is usually on the left flank of the watch, on the 9 o'clock side. A Grande Sonnerie is basically a striking watch, right? So it actually chimes the hours and quarters automatically. So it's like the church bell, except you don't need the deacon to operate it. It does the job itself, which is quite fascinating for a mechanical watch that you can wear on your wrist. So that I mean, that's a pretty fascinating mechanism, right? It's hard not to be impressed by it. The dial work is incredible, from the pattern to the way that it is finished, both by being hand guided guilloche and also flanqué enamel. So it's like it's both. It basically combines two types of hand artisan work on the dial. And it has one of the most prestigious complications when it comes to handmade wristwatches. So look, I mean, it's even in this case, I would love to own. I'm no fan of code 1159, but I operate, if I operated at that level, I would love to own a piece like this. I think this would be one code 1159 that I would not actually kick out of bed for eating crackers. I like it.
That's an amazingly expensive watch.
Oh man,
It's very, very expensive. I mean, like that's like exceeding a lot of Richard Milles, right? That's not.
yeah, yeah.
I'm not saying get the Richard Mille over this. I'm just, yeah, it's yeah. That's a lot more complicated than I expected it to be, actually.
Yeah, so I mean, it's
Like that's more than a chronograph.
yeah, so it has the Grande Sonnerie for the hour and minute, and I think it has a Petite Sonnerie as well, which strikes the minutes as well. I don't know if it strikes anything else. It doesn't have a date, so it's not going to strike the date. You should be able to, I think, put it on silent using one of these things if you don't want it to strike. I mean, look, it's maybe you just want to look at that arabesque kind of design emanating from the center, and you don't want to, or offend the other billionaires in that very important board meeting you are having. In the Bilderberg
They
room.
go, could you please put your phone aside? It's not a fucking phone. It's my fucking watch. I will not put it on silent. You could fuck off. I didn't buy this thing to put on silent.
Right. I didn't put $1 million on my wrist. $1 million, literally. I didn't put $1 million on my wrist to put it on silent. You are going to listen to my striking watch. But hey, I mean, it's, again, I think this is one of, it's very hard, and it's again, it wasn't even the aspiration until George Daniels completely went crazy and wanted to become the Breguet of the 20th century. To have an actual artisan putting the watch together and doing everything is very rare. But this is the kind of watch that they did the opposite, which is kind of what AP has specialized for generations as the établissage system. They are the core, and they bring the most knowledgeable and skilled craftsmen. In this case, they brought the best of enamel painters. Who is that? Anita Porcher. They apparently brought the best person with the Rose engine, with the engine turning, which is Jan von Kenel. I hadn't heard of him, but I take their word for it. And I'm sure the complication is their unique thing. Maybe, I know at a certain point it was Philippe Dufour who designed their Grande Sonnerie for them. I don't know whether this caliber has anything to do with it. I would imagine since then they have iterated it a few times, but it's pretty impressive, and it has 48 hours of power reserve. For a power-hungry complication like that, it's not too bad either. And look at this. I mean, this is extremely wearable for that sort of function. 41 millimeters and just 13 and a half thickness. But yeah, I mean, it's basically $1 million, three quarters. It's a lot of watch. It's a lot of money. Yeah, that's a beautiful, beautiful piece, and possibly the most prestigious complication. The chrono chime was pretty interesting too, right? The Speedmaster they brought out this year, which was built on a Blancpain caliber, the 1932. That is also a great, speaking of these sorts of watches, chiming watches, striking watches, this is an absolute unit. I think it's like 44 millimeters. It's rather thick as well. But the special thing about this watch, right? We said a minute repeater, as a rule, usually has an activator. Either you push a button or slide something for it to articulate, for it to chime hours, quarters, and minutes. A Grande Sonnerie or Petite Sonnerie, which are usually combined, strikes on its own unless you put it into a silent mode. This piece is relatively unique because it actually makes full use of the chronograph function. So it actually, when you activate it and you had engaged the chronograph, it chimes the elapsed time right? Not the time that the hour and minute hands show, but the time that the chronograph hands have accounted for, which is actually quite impressive. But again, here we are talking about a half $500,000 watch, just as for the Audemars Piguet Code 1159 Grande Sonnerie, we were talking about a $750,000 watch. So that's the category.
How much does Omega want for this? 100K?
No, 450,000.
Oh my God. I am never able to get Omega prices these days. They're always like way, way over what I think is even remotely reasonable. Like I'm not afraid to say I'm disliking Omega just from a price perspective.
No,
Horrible value.
Look, this kind of watch, you are not looking for value. You are clearly looking for something else, if you're looking for it at all, because this is a very, very rarefied segment, right? There are not many people to whom this watch appeals and who can also afford it. That's a very small group. That's a very hand-picked group, even among billionaires, because most people don't love these sorts of watches anyway.
That's really interesting. It'd be interesting to know exactly what the real market is for this kind of thing. Yeah.
I think the real market is also, look, it's like Elon Musk's whole empire, in the sense that you have all these different, you have a flamethrower, you shoot rockets into the sky, but it's really all about selling that stupid car, which everyone else makes too now. So it's not even that unique, right? So Omega needs to sell watches, and they also need to market. And sometimes they market pure and simple, just like Rolex does, by putting watches on people's wrists, whether they're real or fictional, whether they're athletes or everyday people, as the song has it. Sometimes they actually use their horological muscles to do that marketing, or their artistic muscles, right, with gem setting and kind of unique, artful jewelry-like pieces, which they have done with Speedmasters more recently as well. So I think the idea is basically, hey, we can do this too, and if one or two people want this, we will actually make you one. But the important thing is to be able to say, hey, we can do high horological work. We don't just make watches for the everyman, which is what Omega's image is. So they're trying to break from that image in a way, not in a radical way, perhaps, but they want to show, hey, we are not only about that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the kind of statement they're making by putting it on the Speedmaster of all watches that they can put this on. And they did, right? Because there's that stopwatch looking Olympic model, which has the same caliber, but they have done this too. So it is a statement.
And this actually is a chronograph as well. Looks like it.
Mm-hmm. No, this is the special thing about this, kind of like the Grande Sonnerie, because that's a minute repeater, but it strikes on its own. This is also a minute repeater, but it doesn't chime the time in hours and minutes. It chimes elapsed time. So once you engage the chronograph and engage the chime, engage the minute repeater, it actually sounds out the chronograph hands, not the hour and minute hand.
I like that. I like that a lot, actually.
It's a cool, very cool configuration for
for
a chronograph.
Let me tell you, when I got my first chronograph, which was the Speedmaster, I actually tried to do running with it. And
Yeah,
so when
yeah.
I do running, I do interval running, and I was trying to figure out like how much of my run am I actually running as opposed to, taking a break between sprints. And so I was starting and stopping it. But it's almost impossible to read while jogging, basically. So I'm
Well, you
either
can
sprinting or I'm jogging, and it's almost impossible to to read. So if
you
it
can
had the
you can
chiming,
jog with this and chime your fucking time if you would like.
yes, yeah. Okay. I got another 2 minutes to go.
Okay, chime the yeah with your $500,000 watch. I guess you can run around a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly going to be like people who are rich enough to not even think twice that the functionality is actually useful, and so I'll just buy it. As in, like, they have my problem. They just have 100 times more money than me, 1,000 times more money than me.
Yeah, I think the dial is actually quite beautiful, but again, like you said, Aiden, in the chat, um, is it $400,000 beautiful? That's a little much. I mean, I already have a problem spending more than $15,000 on a watch. So
How thick is this?
this is actually rather thick. Let me see. I want to say,
Because the mid case of the a normal Speedmaster is very slender.
so how thick is Omega Chrono Chime? Almost 17 millimeters, and it's almost 45 millimeters in case diameter as well.
Wow. 17. Is there any real comparison to that? I mean, people talk about Black Bays being chunky, but I think you have to go up to the deep sea to get something that'll challenge that.
17.3, in fact, is the exact number, apparently.
Let's see. Rolex. Deep sea.
Yeah, I mean, the only unfair comment really in the chat was that the dial is actually an enamel baked, aventurine dial, so it kind of looks like a very rich blue night sky, which, I mean, it's beautiful, but again, is it like the decorations for the chronograph registers as well as the rejo in guilloche is quite beautiful as well. I love that even the hammers are in their proprietary pink gold. That's fantastic. But and the gong too, apparently. But yeah, $400,000 plus or $450,000 really. I'm not sure.
Oh, in
Yeah,
my weird Googling around, I came across a website, newsroom.rolex.com. Have you ever seen that before?
yeah, they have the press kits, kind of like the images that the press can use, right? Isn't that the website?
Yeah. And it has information in copy as opposed to like split out into graphics and different ways. It's all in like one flat sheet
Hmm.
as opposed to, and I think overall there might be actually more information here, which is
Yeah,
kind of cool.
that's where I harvest my information as well. But certainly that's where Hodinkee, a block to watch, or those sorts of outlets. I'm sure they also get more inside connections as well. But that's one way to get that sort of copy, which you can use, of course.
Yeah, what can I say? Still slowly growing out of love with the Speedmaster and Omega. I just think they're overpricing everything that they do right now. It's getting silly. And there's another YouTuber who's a real Omega file, and he fell out of love with Rolex because of like exclusivity and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And I'm like, but that's exactly what Omega are doing now, and you're not calling them out on it. You know, like if models like the Snoopy and the Ed White and the rumored next Ed White, whatever it is, a Steel 321 that's going to be even more expensive and even more exclusive. I'm just,
But I mean, they have how many 321s they delivered to begin with to make them more exclusive? I mean, look, of all exclusive and crazy things they do, I actually appreciate the 321 since I learned that they have a dedicated workshop for it, that they assemble it separately, etc. Okay, clearly it's more work intensive. I understand, but I mean, what are they doing now?
yeah. Oh no, I understand. I'm just saying, like, so soon, like the Ed White's not that old, and they're doing another Steel 321 that will be even more expensive and more exclusive, and also the 60th anniversary Bond watch. Apparently, that's going to be highly exclusive as well. I'm just like, oh,
Okay.
come on, like, yeah. Aside from that exclusivity, I think that would have been a sort of a lukewarm watch. It's definitely a step in the right direction, but there's enough things about it I think to dislike to not drop the money on it. I mean, I certainly like that they're doing 321. I just think that the Ed White's cool. That's fine, but whatever the proposition of another steel 321 that's even more exclusive and more expensive than the Ed White already is seems just I don't understand.
I think, look, I mean, 321 contemporary or vintage, it's a beautiful watch. You maybe saw it on my Instagram.
Mm,
I wore my best friend's 321 this watch. Uh,
yeah.
like one afternoon, I borrowed it while he was wearing my Breguet Type 20.
Mm.
It was a hard watch to give back. I have to tell you that. It is a pretty lovely piece. Um,
Yeah, I think I was talking to Meech about Snoopy versus Ed White, and I thought it would be a hard choice, but actually, when you look at photos up close, it's like it's not really that hard of a choice. It's Ed White all day long.
I agree, and I think the modern one with the exhibition case back, if you appreciate that history, it's actually charming. Um, I mean, of course, this is great too, because it's the pre-moon thing, so it
Mm.
actually has the hippocampus, like that old school Omega logo, rather than man on the
The
moon kind of
stylized, yeah.
gimmick, of course, because that hadn't happened yet. Um, so it's historically it's very nice. The contemporary version is nice if you can get it at retail or close to retail at least. And Snoopy is, again, I have tried on the Snoopy recently. I also think that's a very charming watch. But between the two, like you said, to me, it's easy. I mean, it's 321 all day, every day.
Yeah, it's a fun watch. It just isn't worth the grey market prices or the level of exclusivity that is implied by that. I think if you got it for 9,000, I'd say hurts a little bit. It doesn't feel like there's thousands of dollars more value there than just a regular Speedmaster, which is already, in my opinion, expensive at about 7.2K.
Mhm.
But yeah, certainly where this went to and grey prices is really uncalled for. If you're upset about Daytona's going to 30,000 plus, you should be very upset about Snoopy's being 30,000 plus. Yeah. So I
How's
was just
Junior?
looking at prices for 15450.
Hey, Junior. Hey, man.
He needs me to help him in Lego Batman. I'll be right
Let's
back.
yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. Um, Man, Junior is one of the recurring characters, as you guys know, on this show. So we appreciate him, and I love both Batman and Lego. So I can't really keep him from doing that. Um, yeah, I think there are a few interesting ways that Ozzy can go in terms of his collection from this point on, and I kind of appreciate that he's even taking a look at AP at this point. Um, because as much as I like the kind of single-minded um, quest to collect almost exclusively one brand, I mean, Aussie has many great Rolexes and some very nice Tudors as well. Hey, Meech. Hello. Hello.
Oh,
Oh.
shalom.
No, don't do that.
All right. Guten Tag.
That's better. That's already better. Guten Tag. Wie geht's? Oh, you don't actually speak German either. That's wonderful.
I I could run with a joke, but I won't.
Hey.
Hey, Mitch. Hey, Oz.
I mean, to be fair, like I in theory, I should speak German quite fluently, considering I grew up in a German town. But you know,
Oh yeah. I mean, in Minnesota, there are a lot of German and Scandinavian origin people, right? Or people of those descents.
correct, and a lot of tradition still stands there. So, you know, in certain areas, my kind isn't exactly yeah, it's not exactly accepted in most areas.
I see. That's not so good to hear.
Hey, you know, so old habits die hard. You know.
Interesting. Yeah, it's very sad. That's very, very sad. JB is asking Oz, have you put a feeler out for the Meteorite Pepsi?
Yeah. I didn't put the filler out, but I was asked, like, do I want it? So I'd say that would be easy.
Okay, but you're not too hot for it. You're not liking that as an option.
I like it, but my wife doesn't. It's really that simple.
No, I mean that matters. Look, I think even as a general rule of thumb, I understand that as a guiding factor. But in your case, this is actually one half of how you guys are commemorating your 10th anniversary. So,
Right.
you know, whether your wife likes it or not actually is a very relevant factor in this case.
Yeah, yeah. And she's got better taste than me, and it's such a heavy piece in terms of money that I can't get something that she doesn't like much, honestly. Like it's not like one of those things where it's like, well, this is just for me, it's just something I get to, it's just my finances. No, at $50,000 range, you're talking about affecting the family's bottom line ultimately. It'd be like buying a car without telling your wife, I think. You know what I mean? Like, it's not that you can't have one or one that you really like.
Yeah,
It's
but
just
the
it's
be a man, be a man. You're the head of household. You don't need your permission. Be a man.
hey man, look, I think
Hey
there's been a lot of
man,
job layoffs. I may not be head of household for very, very much longer. We'll see what happens.
hey man, hey man. I like that it reminds me of Archie that hey man entrance.
Yeah. Hey man, so
Man,
cool, man. It's all cool.
Bluesy. Did you hear that bluesy montage that
Yeah,
was
yeah,
AI prepared?
yeah. I seen that. Yeah.
Bluesy, 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 bluesy. It's
Now,
two tone.
actually,
My two-tone bluesy, bluesy. What? You know what I think about the bluesy, Paul?
it's the bluesy. Um, now I don't want to start a rumor here. If I misunderstood it, I misunderstood it. But is Archie selling his Explorer 2 to fund that bluesy?
I really don't know. I haven't
Well, I
followed
mean,
at
the
all.
Explorer 2 wasn't a gift either, was it? I mean, it's
Well, I no, I so I just kind of skimmed through the stream when he got it or when he first started wearing it on his stream, and I caught the tail end of a sentence from him saying, "Oh, I got the bluesy," and I gave it to. He said like, "My Explorer 2 was with Bobby or somebody like that." So I don't know if he's having his Explorer 2 on consignment to cover the gap on a bluesy or what. I could be totally misunderstanding that, and if I am, that's on me. But I just yeah, I just
I
thought that was
honestly
interesting.
don't know. I mean,
yeah.
I know sometimes some people say as a shtick, like, I don't watch this, I don't watch that. I'm not even a subscriber to those channels anymore, so I really have no clue what's going on.
Yeah, I
Hmm.
haven't been watching the mainstream.
Yeah, even like, I took a page from Ozzy, he kept saying like, I don't care about Rebel streaming, or I stream whatever I want. I don't even care if it
Well,
coincides
I
with,
mean,
with some.
even if there was designated time slots, I mean, like you said, it makes no difference. But nowadays, everyone's rebel streaming everyone. Like I'm pretty sure, like at this time slot, I seen Crappy Luxury, Tim Wright, and who was it? Watch Nicholas, all streaming during your time. So I mean, are they technically rebel streaming you? I don't think so.
No,
It's
no, no, because I
it's
mean,
just
I'm
the
not.
way everyone's schedule lined up.
No. I'm first of all, I'm not anyone's OG. So if you're streaming at the time I stream, who cares? I don't need anyone to respect me in that way. I don't expect anyone to respect me that day. And honestly, I've never watched Crappy stream at all. Again, no offense. I'm just not interested. I think, it's just not
You
my
mean you
genre.
don't want to talk about air fryers and wheels of cheese?
But that's beautiful, but I don't, I would rather eat rather than talk. Um,
Like my point is, like, there's so many people doing this right now. It's impossible
so what?
to kind of not have overlay. You know?
It's fine. Competition is healthy too. I'm a capitalist, so it's fine.
Yeah, but like, there's not many of them that actually run a watch channel.
Yeah, I mean, that's
Yeah.
what I was gonna say as well. But that's okay too. Again, there can be overlap in terms of time. There can be overlap in terms of even content. But at the end of the day, it's quality and quantity that wins. I think I have a lot of stamina. I have proven that. I have a lot of content. I have a lot of knowledge. I have proven that. I have a few more things to prove, and I have to be even more consistent. And I have years to prove that as well. It's coming along. I'm not threatened by anyone or anything, um, except for the big guy, sort of, who is the three letter name. That's the only
Arch?
entity that puts fear in my heart. But it's a good kind of fear. It's good to be God fearing.
I mean, Arch has 3 letters in it, so I'm just, I'm trying to figure it out here.
Did you went to Oxley High as well?
He could be any one of us. I'm just trying to piece it all together.
Did you go to Oxley High as well? Is that is that what we're talking about here? How is arch a 3-letter word?
You got to say it in the short term.
Arch.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah,
Like a nagging British wife. Archie, Archie.
that's still not 3 letters, but yeah, sure. Get it. I get it.
The
I get
Brits are backwards, so they use shorter syllables.
Meech, what do you think about the Royal Oak?
Yeah, actually, I was going to come on here and talk to you about that. Yeah, I think the Royal Oak's the way to go, but I just don't think you should listen to Lord on this one. Don't go for a fucking gray dial or white dial. That's bullshit. That's garbage. Look,
Well, you
they're the
said
original.
honestly, like my first impressions, I like the white dial.
Look, don't buy that. Don't buy that garbage. There's a reason why the original OC got one for fucking free, because it was a white dial. And the guy didn't want the white dial. And there's a reason why the original OC is getting rid of his, too, because it's a white dial. You go blue dial or bust.
Well, we'll see. I mean, my gut check. I before looking at rest of the market, I just looked at dials. White dial, I like that the most.
Do you like it because it's cheap?
No, I looked at that before I understood what the actual market was.
Because the white dials are the cheapest right now, Ozzy. Don't lie to yourself now.
I think the black dial is the cheapest.
I don't know. But I will say this, though, Ozzy, I think you are correct. I think you will have to buy this gray market. There's no point. Because to make a long story short, I called the Chicago Audemars Piguet this morning and I inquired about a 15550. And I said, I only want the blue dial. And I said, I understand this might take some time. And I said, if I'm more than happy to set up a Skype and everything else with you. I said, I prefer not to make a special trip out there just to show my presence. But the rep kind of sounded like he was I don't know, unentertained. Like he basically, the conversation only lasted like a minute. He basically said, well, I'm sorry, sir, we are AP, we do not take wait lists, we do not have wait lists. I will write down your name, your number, and I call you if something changes. And that was essentially the end of the conversation. Basically him telling me to go fuck myself.
I'm surprised
honestly.
they even talked to you on the phone.
Yeah, same here actually. But I would just say,
What an honor. What an honor.
yeah, I've been blessed. I've been blessed by the watch gods. One of the prophets from the Holy Trinity has spoken to me. I'm here to spread the gospel. Look, I would just say, yeah, you're probably gonna have to buy a gray. Just save yourself the headache. Don't buy a code 1159. Don't buy a fucking white dial because I know you don't want it. Nobody wants white dials.
No,
I do. Honestly.
I do. I like it.
Stop lying to yourself, Ozzy. Ozzy, it's one thing to lie to me and Lord, but it's another thing to lie to yourself, my guy.
My wife prefers a white dial too. Like that's the one that.
I think the wife might have more influence here than you, Ozzy. Here, just go for the blue dial.
Honestly, yeah. I mean, look, I needed to be realistic a little bit because, again, whether you can or cannot, the only realistic chance you have to get any even reduced sized Royal Oak is with the non-blue dial. If you want the blue dial on the secondary market, it will have even more premium. They also start asking already for bullshit premiums for the 50th anniversary rotors because they are discontinued basically already because it's not the 50th anniversary anymore. So it's gonna be a real pain in either case. So why make that more difficult? That's why I tried to steer him towards gray. Actually, I actually kind of like the gray because I like the idea of a monotone look. I really don't like the white dial on this one, but that's just me. I mean, who cares? Because especially again, this is like a very personal occasion kind of thing. So it's
yeah, but you want that fuck off value, right? I mean, a gray doesn't say fuck off. It just says, it's the only one I could really get, so I settled.
Well, it's still head and shoulders harder than a steel Daytona for sure.
I don't know if you're gonna. I'm just looking at this. If you're gonna blow this much money, if you're gonna bypass the dealer, and you're gonna blow this much money in the gray market, you may as well make it count.
Right, like
There's
if
no point in
I
trying
get the
to
I get
settle
the
and
one
say,
that I actually
"Well, I
want.
got the gray, I got the white out because it was cheap, and now I can say I own a piece of the Holy Trinity." Nah,
Yeah,
you need to
I'd
fuck
get the
off,
one that
Watch.
I'd actually want, Meech.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
Honestly,
I'm not
again,
hearing the enthusiasm with the white dial, my guy.
I I kind of like the ice blue. I kind of like the
I like
gray,
the
but
ice blue.
of course, this is it. I
Beautiful.
mean, you know,
The ice
yeah,
is beautiful, but it's $50,000 right now on at minimum on the gray market.
yeah, and that's
Uh,
100% premium, basically.
yeah, I've been looking around. Hold on, I looked. I did some research. Let me have a look.
It takes some digging, but you can find the standard blue for about 45,000, 40.
Let me have a quick look. I did write all of these down. So I took some recent prices from Rolex forums. So for the 15550, I don't have much on the 15450. I got one. So for a blue 15450, 38,000. For a white, 33,000. For the 15550, 49 for the blue, 63 for the ice blue, all unworn.
Yeah, the ice blue, in fact, in a lot of these 50th anniversary models, trends even higher than the night blue one, which is the classic color. But I mean, I'm sure it will settle at some point. Still, I that kind of premium for me, it will never be worth it. So I don't know. I can't say more than that.
I'd agree with you, Lord, but I mean, it's not like I think out of the Holy Trinity here, I don't really see AP really taking a huge hit. Like, I mean, okay, so with the exception of the 37, because it's the lady size, yeah, they'll probably come down a significant amount here in the next 4 to 5 months. You probably will see them hit. I think they'll bottom out at 30 on average, 35, but I don't see them dropping any lower than that, honestly, because the watch retails at 25,000, right, on
Mm.
average. So I really don't see him bottoming out to like say, I don't know, 27, 28. I just don't see it.
Okay. Well, I mean, I agree. I agree. I mean, it's not a bad. Actually, for someone who says a bunch of bullshit all the time, that was one of the most sober analyses you have ever provided on the watch market, Mitch. So I want to salute you for that.
Oh no, that's just the buzz kicking in, my guy.
But the thing is, you know, the three of us, again, we are in distinguished company. We all suffer from the small wristitis. So it's 37 is actually quite well fitting for us. Whatever size you think or say it is, actually 39 is where we should really be tapping out when it comes to the Royal Oak. 41 is just too large.
I've tried on the 39 mil jumbo. Like they don't make 239s, do they? Or
what do you mean
how do I say this?
239s?
So there's not like a standard 39 mil and then a 39 mil jumbo, correct?
There used to be the 15300s, which is basically a 39. I don't know if they still make something like this. I think they do, but the very popular one was 15300 that had a centrally deployed seconds hand and the AP logo at 12. So it was kind of popular for that reason. It was a little thicker, you know, a little chunkier.
Okay.
But still a nice watch. So you may have tried the 15300.
I don't know, but either way, the way it was explained to me was and the way it was listed in the pre-owned catalog was 39 mil jumbo. Anyways, I digress.
If it's the jumbo, that's 15202. Yeah.
Okay. Anyways, that 39 mil jumbo, it how do I say this? The dial seems like a 39 mil at the minimum, maybe dare I say a 40, but the slab of the case makes it run like a 41, like a genuine 41. Where I would imagine the 41 itself probably runs more like a 45 mil. So I think the 37 mil runs more authentically to a 39 mil if we're being down to the wire.
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of eyeball it like that. I think that's fair. That's what I was saying actually when the conversation started. It wears basically, the Jumbo wears like the Submariner 41, basically. You can say that. I think the new Submariner wears like the Jumbo extra thin when it comes to the Royal Oak. I think
Absolutely.
that's fair. Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, 41 for that reason, I think is completely not, you shouldn't go anywhere near that. If you ask me, Oz, they used to have that could be an option. Look at 15,300 since you are already dipping onto the secondary market, Oz, if you are back from playing Lego Batman. You can consider that. Mike David, thank you so much. 20 New Zealand dollars. I'm over here all girthy. 40 millimeter minimum, up a 44 millimeter. Well, I mean, here's a man's man. Aussie
Exactly. I mean, see, me and Mike kind of suffer from the same struggles, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, but except, I mean, he's talking about his wrists. Maybe you're talking about something else, but certainly not your wrists.
I don't know what you're talking about, Lord. They're fucking massive. All right, it's just the photo angle.
Was it cold?
Yeah, it was extremely cold. All right, extremely cold. I just washed my hands previously before that, so kind of double shrinked.
Very well then. So let's talk shop, because you do change your mind, even though you had plans for retirement, and then you got a few more watches in quick succession. I think now you're happy with your day date, the way it came back. Let's start with that. It's back now in your hands and it works fine and you're happy with it.
Yeah. So look, I mean, I'll own up to my goofs here, I guess. So basically, I think what the conclusion was is whoever grabbed the watch and set it. I think the sales associate just set the time and then threw the crown back in and then called it a day and then handed it to me. So therefore, it just didn't have enough power reserve to kind of do everything all at once. I've been wearing this watch for about a week straight here, and I have not had a single issue. The second issue would have been like maybe the date wheel gets stuck on Tuesdays, which it performed its task perfectly fine. So, hey, you know what though? At the end of the day, I'd rather be able to laugh at it and say, hey, you know what? I don't know how to use this watch than have it sent back to Rolex for a service for the next 4 to 5 months.
Okay. Well, I mean that's fair, but you're happy with it for now to begin with.
Yeah, I don't really foresee myself actually selling this one. It's even if a new one, if I got a phone call for a new one today, I would probably pass on it, just due to the fact that like I'm still ahead of the game here. So like when this watch was being sold, it was for 31,000. I got it for 22 something. So well ahead of the game. About 11 grand in discounts, if you will. And on a new one, if you buy a brand new one today, you're probably losing about that same 11 grand as you walk out the door. So I don't really see myself selling this one.
Well, that's good. I'm happy with it if you are. And also I know that you like that particular configuration, yellow gold 36 champagne dial, and you actually like the stick markers with lume, right?
I mean, it's not a deal breaker for me by any means. I actually do like I like the stick markers in general. The loom kind of does make it look a little funky, I'll admit at times, but um, yeah, I mean, in an ideal choice, maybe if I would have paid attention a little bit more, because David SW had one with hour or the Roman numeral hour markers, but he was also, let me see if I remember correctly. I believe he was three grand higher. He was at 25,000 for his solid gold one. But honestly, at the end of the day, I'm not gonna split hairs on it.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, again, you know, a lot of people watch him now. I always was a fan of John Buckley because of the dials that were named after him, which are the Datejust and Day-Date dials with printed Roman numerals, right? That's why Rolex forums people started calling them Buckley dials, because John Buckley loved them, and he also collected a lot of them. He does a lot of dial switches, with people's knowledge, of course, since he has the entire collection basically for Day-Date and Datejust dials. It's not unusual for people to have their personal Day-Date, and they get it refreshed every 5 years or so, every service. They throw in a new dial in there. I know Rolex might not do that anymore, although they still might, as long as you buy it from them. But certainly, your local Rolex expert can give you a new dial when it actually gets serviced, and that could be a different kind of look. Whatever you are looking for there. I mean, it might be Roman numerals, it might be a different color, it might be even a semi-precious thing. Again, for people and their own watches, I don't think there should be any limits. The limits are where people get sneaky and pass things off as something they're not, sell things like they're collectible one-of-a-kind pieces when it's just a hack job of a refinish or dial swap. But your own watch, if you want a different dial down the road, why not?
Yeah, I did think about that, and someone did bring it up to me. It's like, oh, just swap the dials. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't feel comfortable. I couldn't live with myself because then I'd be walking around with a Frankenstein watch. Honestly, the dial would not be genuine with the watch, and it would be disrespectful to the watch itself, quite frankly. And I
This
think that's
is
kind of part of the reason why I stopped wearing my Milgauss is because it has a replacement crystal on it, and I don't know. I don't like it. I don't like it. It's a Franken watch at that point. It's not real. It's not genuine.
I think this is something that you should talk to your therapist about, Meech. I feel like the problem is more than watches here.
Who knows?
um, yeah, I honestly, I mean, I think it's an option, but if it's an option that you're not comfortable with, it doesn't make sense, because the dial change would be for you to enjoy your watch in a different way, or even enjoy your watch more, possibly. If it's going to make you uncomfortable with your own watch, that seems counterintuitive to me. So I wouldn't recommend it in that case. But there are even people in the community. There are people who have Day-Dates with dials they swap to something a little more visually interesting, something they prefer aesthetically, something that reminds them of something else, maybe a unique dial that they have always wanted. I mean, with Day-Dates, General Saad, our common friend here, he loves a lot of rare Day-Date dials, and he collects them. So he has done these kinds of things a number of times, I'm sure, and not only once. And you can talk to him at some point if it is at all of interest. But it's counterintuitive if you don't like the idea.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't know. I guess, like I said, at the end of the day, the hour markers don't really they're not a deal breaker for me, honestly. As a matter of fact, I didn't even notice them when I first bought the watch, so I thought it to be a bit of a unique bonus. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
I mean, in the gentleman's club, I guess it becomes visible when the show starts. So it's that's not so bad.
Honestly, no. I mean, jokes aside, Lord, the loom sucks on this. I don't get why they actually. I think that's why they. I think eventually, I think that's why Rolex eventually stopped because the loom is so piss poor. I mean, I'm willing to bet a $20 Timex would probably outloom this motherfucker by a mile. So the loom's actually pretty shitty.
All right, I mean I understand, and I mean
I
to
mean,
me
it's
also,
bright, but it only lasts for like not even a minute, like 2 minutes max. It's kind of pointless.
to me honestly also, for me it's about the genre of the watch too. It's just Day-Date is not the kind of watch that really needs loom for my taste anyways, but it is what it is. I think whether it's weak or strong, um it's fine. It's not that big of a deal as
Wow.
one way or
I would
another.
agree with that statement, though. But when you think about this, this was at one point in time a $31,000 watch, and if the loom is only 2 minutes long, that's kind of an insult, isn't it? Like, it's understandable with a $500 watch or $100 watch, $50 watch. All right, yeah. But if you drop 31 grand and the loom only lasts like a minute to 2 minutes, ooh, I don't know about that.
Yeah, I understand. Again, I think the way you put it first was the best way. I think there is a reason why Rolex eliminated luminous markers from Day-Date, because it's I think it just doesn't fit the mood or genre of the watch. And also, like you said, maybe the execution, maybe the application was just not up to par, was not up to the standard that is set by Rolex's own professional series. That makes sense to me.
Right.
What's the next step though? You said you are not getting rid of this anytime soon, now that you have settled with it, now that you have worn it for a while and you lived with it and you like it. What's next? Where are we
I
going?
mean, I've kind of said like, yeah, it's nice to be done now with collecting watches. At the very least, take about a 4 to 5 month break here. Honestly, there's only three watches that I'd really kind of jump at the bit to get at, and two
Mhm.
of them aren't even in existence right now. Uh, but I would get
Well,
rid of my Milgauss for the updated version. Now, if they create a new Z Blue, that would be great. That's the one I'd go for. And probably just do a clean trade, quote unquote. Although I really, given that Milgauss has a replacement crystal on it, it's probably only worth about 200, $300 because it's not genuine anymore. Um, and then the Explorer 2, if it came back in 40 mil, I'd definitely go after that, which I don't really see them actually ever coming back to be honest. Um, and then I mean, a root beer. I wouldn't mind a root beer, but it'd have to be stupidly low on the price. Um,
I think, I just wanted to say one thing before we move on about the Explorer 2. I think Rolex increasingly is invested in making certain distinctions between their different sports models. So obviously there's, on the one hand, because industrial production dictates that they use same/similar cases, which allows them to expedite the process, streamline the process. On the other hand, I think they like the fact that they have a 39 millimeter Ranger on Tudor's end now, and a 36 millimeter Explorer in the Rolex lineup. They like the fact that they have a 41 Submariner, and the GMT Master and Daytona have their own cases, basically. They like the fact that the Explorer 2 is a different thing. I think they're trying to basically give them each their own breathing space, their own kind of definition and genre. And that's how it's gonna be for a while, I think. So you have to go back to 5-digit if you want a 40 millimeter Explorer 2. You have to go back to 16570.
Back to the olden days. Yeah, I mean, I've seen a couple of them pop up now, and every time I see one that's half decent price, the bracelet's shot on them. I mean, they're absolutely fucked, so there's no point in buying it. I don't know. Time will tell, I guess. I mean, there's a few other oddball watches that I'd entertain the idea with, but there's nothing that.
For example, what would be the
okay? So
ultimate? What would be
the Oyster Perpetual 39 mil in rhodium. If those hit probably around 5,500, like if they hit their retail price, I'd be very interested in getting one. I don't know if I'd ever keep it, but I'd be very interested in getting one. And they're getting closer, actually. Because for a while they used to be, I mean, for the longest time they'd be used to hold at 10 to 12, and then they dropped down to 9 to 8. Now you can kind of find them for 7.5, higher 6s. So
Okay.
they're getting closer.
Okay, that's an idea. That's an idea. What else? Is there any other oddball watches that you would look at?
Yeah, so there's an Aquaterra, an Omega Aquaterra. So having owned the Aquaterra before, I think it's a great watch. I wish they would have done the olive green again in a 38 mil, not this mint green. Look, for Rolex pulled off the mint green perfectly fine. It looks great. It looks very cool, desirable. But when Omega attempted to pull it off, it doesn't look fucking good. It just looks cheaply made. Because I remember I was up there with the Omega boutique up in the Twin Cities, and they had a ladies Aquaterra with the new mint green dial. The one that's supposed to come out, the one that was supposed to come out this year as well, was supposed to have the same dial. But and I took a look at it, and it just the green looked fucking cheap. But they had an olive green Aquaterra 41 there in the case too, and it's such a dark military green that just kind of shines. It looked amazing. But unfortunately, it is a 41 mil, and I'd say it runs more like a 42, if anything. And I would just love to see them kind of reissue that in a 38 mil, but I don't think they ever will, honestly.
I see. So you basically want a green dial watch, but there's nothing that quite satisfies you at this point in time that's still available.
I know that Aquaterra is a very special green. The Omega really did a really great job of getting that green down to a path. And I think that's the only green dial I'd actually be legitimately interested in.
You said 41 is a little too big, no? Did I misunderstand you?
Yeah, no, 41 is definitely way too big, and I'm not a fan of the bracelet. Now, the bracelet is comfortable, but it's a butterfly, and so I think what the hell was the offset on it? I think it was a two on one side, 3 on the other side, so it pulled to the left, or no, it pulled to the right. Excuse me. The watch never quite properly fit on my wrist. And then I did throw it on a NATO once, and for some reason I just never took a photo of it. And I threw it on the NATO for like one day, and I think I ended up selling it like the next day because I bought a 40 mil Submariner. So, but yeah, it seemed to fit appropriately, or it seemed to fit a little bit better then. But yeah, look, I think the Aquaterra is a great watch for what it used to be, and I think the Blue Dial is a great one too. I think you can get them on Joma Shop for about 4.5. I think they're a great watch for anybody. The bracelet does kind of suck if you don't have if you're not like exactly like, I don't know, 6 inches or 7-inch wrist or something like that. It seems to favor the exact amount. I've heard a lot of people complain about the style of the Omega's butterfly clasps because they just don't do half links on those bracelets. So it really is, you're either it either fits you or doesn't type thing.
JB says, Meech, I can vouch for the Aquaterra. Yeah,
That's a great watch.
He has a white dial one on rubber for a daily, and I think I like that watch as well. I think the Aquaterra, not the recent releases perhaps, but in general, the Aquaterra is a nice watch. I think it's even underrated in a way.
It definitely is it's the poor man's Datejust, but it's better than a Datejust in my opinion. Because it just does it better, dial wise, I think. I'm not a fan of the new Aquaterras though. I don't get why they decided to do the offset of, let's say you got a blue dial and the date wheel is white. Like I never understood the math behind that. It kind of disrupts the flow. They should have done a blue dial and then a black date wheel. I think that would have been better. But hey, you know.
I mean, again, I'm sure they have some logic behind these things because these things are actually designed through a process. But I think sometimes it's really designed by committee, as they call it, right? You know, everyone has an input. Someone says, hey, you know, I represent the Asian market and people really desire to have a date indicator. Others say, hey, you know, if the watch was a little smaller, it could be better. The other guy says, well, make the dial larger and case the smaller perhaps. And it ends up being a hodgepodge of something that doesn't quite cohere. Whereas sometimes it's good to have a certain vision of something and implement it and have it coherent. So a lot of times when you see these things, I'm not going to say as a rule of thumb, I'm not going to say it's always true, but when in watch design certain things don't make sense, chances are because everyone pulled from one end, and at the end of the day it just doesn't make sense together because too many people had an input, which doesn't really result in the best and most coherent design, the most meaningful design, a design that makes sense, that feels intuitive. So it happens to the best of the brands because those are the brands that are trying to cater to a global audience without necessarily relying anymore on original ideas, without daring to implement a singular vision. That's why a lot of people, you know, there's a lot of arguments to be made and a lot of explanations that you can provide about why some of the most serious collectors have taken the turn to independent brands. That the independent turn has been happening for a while now. But one reason I think also is because a lot of independent brands have a very specific, coherent identity and a very compelling story that goes with that identity. So you might hate them, you might not like the design elements at all, but it really appeals to someone because there is real thought behind it, there is real emotion behind it, and there's a story behind it that can back it up. Whereas we cannot say that about Omega and Rolex and Patek Philippe anymore, right? That's not the case anymore with a lot of their designs. All right, so this brings me to the end of tonight's stream. I do need to get some sleep, everyone. It's been a genuine pleasure. I am looking forward to coming back. Maybe I will have an earlier stream tomorrow as well. Who knows? Certainly not as early as I had today. Again, I will direct your attention to that great interview I had with Eric Wind of windvintage.com, one of the foremost vintage experts this side of the Atlantic. I'm gonna put the link in the chat. This was the third interview that I had with him in this Collecting Vintage Watches series. This time, we actually focused on the legacy of vintage design more broadly, but more specifically about how his love for Seiko vintage divers informed the design process between Eric Wind and Jack Carlson for the last Seiko 5, the most recent Seiko 5 Rowing Blazers collaboration. So check out the interview and perhaps the other two conversations that I had with Eric Wind on this channel. In either case, I'll see you on the live stream tomorrow. And until then, Mitch, do you have anything to add? Do you have anything to say before we go?
Guys, don't buy white dials. Don't buy white dials because they're cheap. All right. Don't be that guy.
Oz, are you listening? Buy what you want, man. But I mean, Mitch does have a point on this one, so I can't resist. I can't resist. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Please hit the like button on your way out if you haven't already. Thank you for your support and presence. Mike David, Jake Brooks for your 2 super chats. And hey, I might be forgetting a few here, but I know Nick Butter has contributed with a super chat. And I know JJ dropped some in the beginning as well. And everyone else, thank you for your interventions. Thank you for your questions. I hope to see you tomorrow as well. Until then, take care. Goodbye.